Well, hello and welcome to another episode of ALPS In Brief, the podcast that comes to you from the historic Florence building in downtown Missoula, Montana. I'm Leah Gooley, and I'm the underwriting manager here at ALPS, and I'm here with Meg
Ratzburg, and I'm the account manager for the states of Georgia and West Virginia for our ALPS insured.
And Meg is here. Both of us are here to introduce Abigail Benjamin. She is an experienced West Virginia attorney and one of our insureds, and is here to share an amazing story with us. So with that, we'd just like to turn it over to Abigail to tell us a little bit about your experience, maybe starting with how you began in a solo practice of law.
Yeah, well, so this is kind of okay. Can you guys just see me? This is kind of a eclectic story. So you just let me know if I'm going too much in the weeds. But I am almost 50. This practice has been going on for 7 years, and I sort of did the traditional college law school graduate at 25. Found what I thought was my dream job in public interest law, and then had 2 kids, and I ran into that barrier. I think we're going to talk to later about being a female attorney with young kids. And I want to say it wasn't just a time crunch. It was wanting to show up for my family and my kids in a way that I wasn't just exhausted and overwhelmed. So I didn't get that support, and I just chose my kids. And at age 40, I had made what I thought was a very happy life, not practicing law. I had 6 kids, ages 13 to 1. I was growing kale in my backyard. I was writing fiction. I was following politics and on the news, living in a corner of my home state of West Virginia, about 70 miles from DC. And God bless anyone from DC, but there's a lot of lawyers in DC, and there's a lot of unhappy lawyers in DC. So I was very comfortable not practicing law. And the practice came out when I was 41, kind of on a base of a very ethereal idea and some very thoughtful, good, wise people giving me thoughtful advice. And so the first start was in my faith tradition, Pope Francis is our head. And he really encouraged us Catholics to lean into this idea of environmental justice. And I had been a nonprofit lawyer. I was very keen to sort of economic issues and worries about justice with the poor. But I hadn't really thought about economic justice issues and how that impacts both poor Appalachians and people of color around the United States. So I just kind of had this thought. But again, raising kale, homeschooling 6 kids, I took a one-shot volunteer opportunity. I limited, and I volunteered at an environmental film festival called the American Conservation Film Festival. And I saw this film that just it knocked my socks off. It just really opened up my eyes. And it was about a water crisis event we had in West Virginia. It was the Elk River crisis. And this was the interesting part about, art and film. I definitely was somebody that was educated in the audience. I knew what my state's problems were. I read the news, but seeing this timeline as a lawyer, I was just like, oh my gosh, this was not an inevitable catastrophe. And what happened is we have these giant chemical plants storing chemicals, very dangerous stuff, right on the waters that we all drink from. And it was 2 rust holes the size of quarters that dumped all that toxic stuff, and 1/2 of my state's population lost their drinking water. And they it wasn't the regular boil advisory where it's an inconvenience. You put the pot on the stove for 30 minutes and you have drinking water. You could not bathe in this water. You could not wash your clothes. It was the smell coming out of the taps was making people sick, skin rashes, and not all of the environmental protocols were followed. They called the spill line, they did the stuff, but it was these local small businesses in Charleston. It was an ice cream shop, that Ellen's Ice Cream, that was making their ice cream for the day, and this terrible smell came in, and they were like, "This is not good." And they called the public health coordinator, and that's what started this sort of looking at this environmental issue.
Okay.
So I was like, amazed at that film and the discussion around it, and how I was very interested as a lawyer that this catastrophe, people had known for about 7 years that, this firm was not following protocols, and they were calling in complaints, like nuisance complaints about smells and spills, but they didn't file a lawsuit. I mean, it was just sort of stacking up and stacking up. And so, as somebody who was a lawyer, I was like, man, I wonder if encouraging lawyers to sort of take these small cases, and looking at environmental protection, not as, I mean, God bless them, Sierra Club or these kind of large swaths, but that individual boots on the ground thing, that's what really got me excited. So I called up my property law professor, who I had not talked to in 10 years at the University of Wisconsin. And he is super cool. And let me know if I'm going on too long in the weeds, but he's actually South African. Okay, yeah, it's so weird. But he's South African. His name was Heinz Klug, and he is worked with Nelson Mandela. He helped to do the South African Constitution, and he actually ended up being my law professor, now 20 years ago, because his work against apartheid was so dangerous. There was a price on his head. So he had to come to America to sort of save his life, and ended up falling in love with an American girl and who taught sociology law. And so he just found himself in Madison, Wisconsin, and was my property law professor. So I called him. And again, just supposed to be a one-shot deal. I'm like, I have this amazing film about my home state of West Virginia, and I think it'll really jazz up, the 1Ls in your class, and I want to come share it. And we had this amazing meeting of the minds. And that's what happens kind of with business, I think, is like this synchronicity. And he was like, Abigail, I get you. He's like, this is just like in Africa. And honestly, I was kind of offended as an American. I was like, no. Like, I know West Virginia is weird, but we're like 70 miles from Washington, D.C. Like, you have your problems over in Africa, but like, it's not that bad over here. And he's like, this systemic problem, this is the way that justice can fail to get implemented on the ground. This is systemic. This is worldwide. And I think you should come. And so again, retired lawyer for over 10 years. I had never been on an airplane, and he sent me an airplane ticket and a really nice hotel room to come to my law school to give this presentation. And I was really humbled, because my friends who had stayed on that linear path, I mean, they were partners at law firms in Milwaukee and Chicago. And here I was getting the red carpet rolled out to come back to my law school and speak. And so the idea of my practice, it really came from my South African professor, a visiting law professor from India, and then one of the environmental law professors who just happened, they were a little younger than me, but grew up in Tennessee and really understood the thing that I was seeing. And so that kind of weekend conversation about this idea I had for a practice. And I initially didn't think I had the resources, the time or the money to start my own practice. So I was like, I need to fundraise. I have a great idea for a practice. And the idea for the practice was not somebody that came in from the top down, like Sierra Club or Natural Resources, not that they're not doing great work, but in West Virginia, there's a very much stiff resistance against outsiders telling us what to do.
Sure.
And
that's common, I'm sure.
There's real pushback against, like, what's this Clean Water Act? And so I thought having a Native child that's in the community that is going to Rotary meetings, and I do a lot of acting, so is on community theater, and when I go and do my presentations, which in court, which are some environmental, but quite honestly are a lot of basic property rights, that I don't get dismissed as the outsider. I'm really representing how these harms are hurting us as a community. And so I thought, I had 6 kids, that disqualified me. I was trying to find a new grad, and I was like, hey, I think you could do this for $60,000. I'll fundraise, I'll call my friends, and we'll put this together. And God bless that person from Tennessee, because I kept saying, like, this sounds like a you project. like it sounds like like I don't have a student at 25. I can just fling into this Appalachia to try to make change. Like this sounds like a you project. And I'm like, well, I'm too busy. I've got these 6 kids. And so just kind of that idea of like, not, I can't, but like the shifting a question to, could I could I do that?
Mhm.
And I'm really lucky, my husband was really supportive. My kids were supportive. I had a group of community people that I was working with on the heroin issue, because we got a lot of stuff wrong, but
Okay.
one of the things was the opiate epidemic. And they really just, kind of held my hand through that nervousness phase of, I'm going to sit down and retake the bar exam in West Virginia for the first time at 41. And I'm going to, show up. And I ended up taking the bar exam right in a hotel that overlooked that river. That inspired me to do the thing. And so within a couple days after I passed the bar exam, I had an opportunity. There was because there's not a lot of pro bono lawyers out here floating around in West Virginia. So
Okay.
I got a call from an environmental group to join an action against a state gas company that was doing a monopoly, and they were trying to build a natural gas line over geography that we thought was unsafe. And I just went in to do a speech in front of a group of people, and one guy just literally took off his hat and passed it around, and they threw in $800, enough money for me, because I didn't need money for me, but I had to pay the court reporter. And so we got a deposition from a really good scientist about damage to the Potomac River, and which is the drinking water for not just us in West Virginia, but for all those poor people in DC.
Talk
And
about grassroots. That's amazing.
Well, and it's like
Yeah,
they needed you
So-
and you needed them. I love
Yeah,
that.
well, and it was so, again, I jumped into this lawsuit. I was number 17. I was the 17th lawyer in this lawsuit. The only one who was living in the area. Everybody else was down south in Charleston. And the only one representing, what I feel is like the people. And I was so poor, I didn't have a working printer. So I went to Kinko's, and like they were my law office, and I would print out, the 19 copies I needed and stapled it and sent it off. But yeah, it ended up working, and we got an environmental concession, and I got to get on TV. And so just that type of feedback. I think of having an idea, having really solid people encouraging you to sort of go to that untraditional idea, and then having that success. So that's how I got started.
That is an amazing
I love
story.
that.
It's sort of very weird. Yes, it's very.
I love it.
The fact that you provided a local solution from a local person with community support, as Meg noted, right, in a non-linear
and supported by that international perspective. I mean, who would have thought about that? But that's the beauty of I think lawyers is the analysis we can carry to something that we can be from very different backgrounds, but we can be working on the same solutions, and that's just so exciting to me.
And not for a shameless plug for ALPS, but our focus is solos and small firms, right? And that's the value that those solo firms you can provide in that capacity with this organic idea that you put together. And that's really we're very proud to be able to support attorneys in that position with the pieces that we have, the risk management, the affordable policies, right? And that's really awesome to see that, especially in your local community. That's so inspiring.
Yeah. And I would just say, the importance of my work with environmentalism is it's really important to be a solo, because I would be conflicted out of all of these interesting cases if I was in a larger firm. And also just for me personally, trying to balance having kids and having a practice. I'm the boss, so I don't need to ask permission, to move back, a meeting, to take care of my kids. That's just built into to the practice that I have. And so we'll talk about how ALPS is really special to this story, but it's nice to have sort of those big, firm kind of tools and expertise, but still preserving for me the passion and the interest that really drives me to be a good lawyer.
Brought you out of retirement.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, then this feels like an excellent time to talk about kind of your experience as a female attorney, and more specifically, your experience as a mom, and maybe that piece of the story.
So again, I had started this dream of a practice thinking basically that my having kids was finished. And I, after about 10 months after I had started going back, all jazzed up about environmental issues, my husband decided to take a job as an academic. He's an art professor. And so it was really great for him to switch out of sort of being a long distance commuter to DC and teach his love. But he lost half of his income. And so suddenly this project that for me was just sort of, interesting and volunteering and pro bono, I suddenly had to literally get the grocery money for the kids. And so, I transitioned, thank goodness, ALPS started me on that little first flights program. And then I had moved in sort of organically. And then 2 weeks after I signed my commercial lease to move back to my hometown and open up a kind of, a more standard solo practice, I found out that I was surprisingly pregnant with my 7th child. And it was really awesome, but it was really scary because suddenly I had this commercial lease and I had run into trouble earlier in my career balancing, I felt like, kids and law. And now suddenly I was by myself and having to do that. And so Luke who is awesome. But I had a high risk medical pregnancy with him. And I ended up on bed rest in a hospital, really trying to run my law practice, brand new law practice, with a locked file cabinet in my hospital room and, some phones. And I was able to do it, but I didn't have that sizable kind of war chest, that backup, again, just like daily bills I was paying, but I didn't have enough to pay my ALPS insurance premium. And so that was so beautiful. Luke was born and he was premature and he and I were here, but like kind of, still shaken up by the experience. And I reached out to Meg and I just told her my situation. And I said I was, a new mom and this premature baby, and that I wasn't going to be able to meet that deadline. And she reached back out to me and said, and this was the line that was like, she said, I remember those days. And I'm going to look and she worked out the payment plan for me. But getting that affirmation, I think from somebody from the kind of corporate identity of a malpractice insurance, having them have that caring central thing about caring for me as a person and willing to bet that this was just a temporary hiccup for me and I was going to be, a great client moving forward. It just meant the world to me. And I don't know if I share this with you, Meg, but I used the confidence from our exchange to go talk to a local banker who was also a woman in my town, and I got a better line of credit. And so it really affirmed to me that the practice of law was valuable for me as a young mother, and it was okay to ask for accommodation, and so that I could stay mentally healthy, be there for my kid, and also serve my clients. And it was a fragile time for me, and I really just appreciated that vote of confidence.
That's so awesome.
I love that. That
Yeah.
just touches my heart. When you sent me the email, I cried through the whole office. I'm kind of a crier.
So the backstory is I sent a thank you note to Meg when my little son Luke, who was the premature baby 5 years ago, when he celebrated his 5th birthday, and he's super healthy and happy. And I was just like, thank you, because I have this healthy baby, but I also have a healthy law practice. And, thanks for not making me have to choose one or the other.
I love that
Oh.
women and mothers understand each other and can support each other. I love that. Love that.
Which with
Oh,
the
I'm gonna
backdrop
hear
of
you.
law, right? Everybody take a minute. In the backdrop of law that you mentioned earlier, where that can just be a conflict, right? Trying to show up for your kids and your family in a real way as you also balance some pretty heavy expectations in the larger law firm space, right? It can be so overwhelming, especially to women who have the mantra of doing it all and some of that context that is, it's hard to mentally work your way through. Clearly, you said, well, at some point, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to step away. And that's not what the law profession needs. And we see that in that women are a majority now of law school students, but after 5 years start to drop out of the professions for a lot of the same reasons that you've talked. So very interested to hear more about your thoughts on what some of those challenges are for women in law, and where, you know, we or the law community might be able to meet some of those challenges.
So I'm so glad you asked that question, because this was exactly my story. I had gone from a really small town in West Virginia, 5,000. I went to a women's college, Smith College out in Massachusetts, and I went to a really good public interest law group in University of Wisconsin. And I had gotten the plum job. I worked as legal service attorney. I worked with a lot of women, and everything seemed to really fall into place from, you know, being 25 to 20 to 29 for 4.5 years. But when I got pregnant with my second child, I felt exhausted. And one of the things that kind of makes me upset is, we as attorneys, we are expert at managing like expectations and delivering conflicting things. And like we're experts at like kind of crisis management. I mean, at least my practice, and I think a lot of other people, it kind of feels like an ER doctor. Like, you plan to work on one thing and a client called and they have an emergency, and so you're going to shuffle your day around. And those are exactly the skills that you need for balance in terms of having a lot of kids, or just having, you know, a creative life. I mean, you know, I got to do Wizard of Oz this summer with my kids. And let me tell you, those 2 weeks that we were in tech rehearsal, not a lot of law was getting done. So, but those kind of shifts, that's really normal as a lawyer. And when I look back, I'm upset at myself at 30 because I felt inferior that, you know, my child needing me, or like the being pregnant, or, you know, asking Meg for an extension because I had a premature baby and had been working for 3 months. That's life, you know, and that's a healthy, well-rounded life. And, you know, it's just amazing that, you know, right now in my stage of life, I had a mom that died of cancer after 2 years of treatment, and my elderly dad needs some help. And it's weird, like, you know, judges and other lawyers are so much more calm about giving me elder law care, you know, like flexibility, than they were about me giving birth and having kids. And I don't know how much is my uncomfortability asking for that. But once I started as a solo, I really had this idea that my husband and my kids were my first 8 clients, and they got the top 8 slots of my day. But that also means I can handle about 30. So there's a whole bunch of work that I can do for the community. And occasionally, you know, somebody has a deposition or I've got a hearing, you know, that those clients bump up and they trump, you know, my 5-year-old. But most of the time, my family gets the top billing, and I'm really comfortable handling the rest of the time. And so the issue then, honestly, right now at 50, isn't so much balancing my being a mom versus being an attorney. It's really making sure that I'm being healthy for me, because I tend not to put myself in the mix. So trying to be healthy and sustainable, you know, keeping up my exercise program, eating right, those kind of things I struggle with much more than, you know, telling a client to pause for a minute while I talk to my kids. And I would also say, when I was growing up, I thought having kids meant you had a career disruption very small, like when they were little, you know, like 0 to 3. But my teenagers, I swear,
Oh,
need me
wow.
way more than my 5-year-old. And it's like the teenager is like fine until like my 20-year-old's in college. And then like suddenly I'm out the door for work and they're just like, and you got to stop and like take that moment and connect with them. But that's where being a solo or small firm is perfect, because it's very, very rare that I have to be in my law office at 9 o'clock in the morning. Like I can take those moments to connect with them when they're ready, and yeah, and I still feel like a great lawyer, if I spent 30 minutes with my teen and show up at 9:30 instead of 9 o'clock. And so
Probably
again,
a better lawyer, because you're
probably
taking care of
better.
what
Yeah,
you need.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you're present when you're present for your clients,
Awesome.
because
Yeah,
their life's taken care of. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So Abigail,
So I would say, oh, go ahead.
just asking, what advice would you give to a 25-year-old, 30-year-old attorney in that position, male or female, facing the crux of kids versus work? What advice would you give them?
I would encourage, I would say, try your best not to see it as kids versus work, but what makes you a healthy human being, and how can you practice law in a way that's healthy? And I made the mistake of, I had female role models when I was 25, just starting off in law, and they were awesome attorneys. Their lives with their families did not look at anything like how I wanted to be. I had really amazing attorneys, but they like either had the swap where the husband was the kind of 1950s spouse that did everything, and they were in the office for 80 to 100 hours a week, or they outsourced, like the nanny came and picked the kid up in the morning at like 5 a.m. and then like had them until 7 and fed them every meal and stuff. And not that that's like bad, but that shouldn't be our only. The idea of a lawyer sitting in the office for 100 hours a week, and I would say 85 plus was very normal for me in a 85 person public interest law job. That, I don't think that makes for healthy people. Not just like that's unsustainable, I think, when you have a tiny newborn that's waking you up. But there was a motivation. I wasn't living a healthy life when I was newly married, but it didn't hit me as bad as when I had this little 1-year-old who even when I saw them, I was so obsessed with worrying about my cases and like how tired I was from this stuff. So male or woman, just really try to find lawyers that are healthy, that are energetic, that are doing awesome in the courtroom, but you want to have time to take you out for a beer or a coffee, and then are interesting to talk to as a beer and a coffee. And so yeah, like that should be, it's more than just, can you practice law well in the courtroom? That's what I feel like. So it's finding a sustainable a sustainable practice. Yeah,
That is such great advice. And so for the current atmosphere, right, in the profession, being able to talk to attorneys in general, to say, be a whole person, have a well-rounded life. The attorney wellness right now is a moderate crisis, right? People are in a tough spot. And so being able to have that message to folks is so important right now, reinforced from folks within the community, people who have made those difficult journeys. Yours is so inspiring in that way, right? The weaving, right? And being able to be back into a position where you're providing value to your family and yourself, and you're
and everything's meaningful, right? And Meg was saying, like, all like the time with my kids and my teens, like that's making me a better attorney because I'm a more fully engaged human. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Beautiful. That's so great. Let's see. Those are kind of the questions in general we had wanted to wrestle with. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, just in your experience in this, again, really inspiring journey to attorneys now, or just in general to the community?
Well, I just want to give a shout out. So my bar association has a free Zoom meeting. It's for mental wellness.
Awesome.
It's really about kind of health, and it's run by a therapist. And I was initially kind of nervous to join, but it has been amazing. And one of the nicest thing is we have a judge on there, which was like kind of very nervous. You're not used to seeing the guys in the robe, like, as you're like, yeah, so I'm struggling with my teen today, or whatever. But it was really humanizing to see people of different ages, different backgrounds, vastly different sections of law. I mean, I think I'm a little guilty of really talking mostly to other attorneys that are in my same skill set, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's so amazing to see people struggling with this idea of how can I practice law, do good to my clients, but also in a way that's sustainable. That's healthy for me. And I would say, 90% of all lawyers that I practice with, and COVID has really helped. I think we're pretty human. We're in a small state. I think people are pretty gracious about, giving extensions or helping a client, really find a good fit between, I might have somebody that has a case, but I'm not the right lawyer for them. So I'm going to reach out and find a referral to them, kind of that humanness. But I would say there is 10% that is kind of jerks, that has that sort of, adverse priority relationship, even when we're not, in court. But this wellness group has helped me have confidence where I'm like, dude, like, you're just not on my team, I'm gonna, keep my armor up and the velvet glove and the professionalism, but it's allowed me, I think, to feel more confident again as that human being. The other thing I would say, again, just call out to ALPS, it's amazing as a solo to put a team together. So even though I'm alone, I have Meg and ALPS is great because for me, I have ADHD. ALPS is like, get your records together, girl. I mean, there's like these firm, always write the engagement letter, always say when you're off the case, and these kind of like, it's almost like a managing attorney role. So that helps me, like, my interest is obviously talking to people and solving the law. Like, it's not necessarily administration, but ALPS is that person that's helping me make sure that I hit the things I need to do to stay, protected and gives me confidence.
Yeah. Awesome to hear.
And
that.
I have a team. I have, financial advisors. I have really helpful with therapists. I have a lot of friends that are therapists because a lot of what we're doing in law is very, it's very emotional. Like I might know what to do, but trying to handle those clients that are, I mean, they come in with property law issues, and I mean, they're crying. I mean, it's really, it can be really traumatic. And so that's what I like. Just having, I might be alone, but I have a team of people that I can look to for my clients, but also I can look to for myself. And I'm always interested in learning how to do things better. The one thing I would say for attorneys that I think I found because I took this little detour, I think it's very, very important to stay intellectually curious and not just go to CLEs, but watch PBS documentaries and go to theater plays and act. My husband and I right now, we're taking an adult tap class on Wednesday nights, and our kids are dancers, and we suck. I mean, we are like the worst. But we're out there, learning the shuffle step and like, doing our little things. And I mean, it is so healthy. I'm almost 49. He's 51. It is so healthy to be in something that like is not your skill level. And I think attorneys, we're interested, curious bunches. And it's sad if we get burnt out or tired, or always having to be the leader, right? The one with the answer. So that's again, I think, mental health is important, exercise, diet is important, but that kind of keeping that, curious, playful kid, the person you were before you sat through contracts law as a 1L, keep that person alive, because that's really who people respond to. And then I think they trust me in my community to have answers for complex things because they see me, as a human being, and I'm out in the community. So that's my
awesome
charge too.
Great.
Well, to wrap things up, we have a couple of lightning round type questions if you're game.
Okay.
Are you a dog or a cat person?
Cats. I'm a cat person. Yes.
Cat person. And what are you reading right now?
Oh, gosh, so much. I actually, and with all my different interests, we have a family bookstore. That's kind of like our family farm. But this is a West Virginia. I swear I didn't know this question was coming. This is just on my. I use books like I use law. I have my other stuff too. But Perla's book is a West Virginian who actually wrote very sympathetically about the Chinese. And this is The Exile is actually a portrait about her mother. And so I lost my mom. My mom died after a 2-year battle with cancer in January. And it's been really helpful, not just to take time off my practice to go to grief group. That's good too. But it's been really helpful for me to read a lot of books where people are reflecting about their mom. I feel a lot more, connected just hearing about other people's stories.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Last question. Do you see any of your 7 kids going to law school?
So here's the thing. My husband is a digital artist and art professor. And so they really had mom's job was boring, right? Compared to like dad's job of like making animation and stuff. But my 16-year-old has just really fallen in love with history. And I was like, the first time she told me she had opinions about President Andrew Jackson, I was like, whoa,
Yeah, girl.
And her little ballet dancers, it turns out that one of her good friends is really excited to become a criminal defense attorney, aka Perry Mason. So that has been adorable. And so she secretly, I think after I joke that her ballet career, like either when she's 40 and she retires from ballet or she gets injured, she's in line now to take over my firm. So that was
Succession
really
planning starting early. Okay.
Dancing.
Yes.
I love it.
Well, I can be more grateful for your time with us today, for sharing your stories and such great advice. Wonderful to talk with you today. Just a huge thank you to you.
Yeah, such a delight, Abigail.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And good luck to everyone out there.
Great.
Right,
thank you.
I'll just say to our listeners, just if you have any questions for ALPS, if you're insured with us, please reach out to your account manager, like Meg.
West Virginia or Georgia.
Absolutely. Happy to answer any questions. As Abigail had mentioned, there are some serious risk management, how to run a solo practice resources on our website. It's alpsinsurance.com. There's some great blog posts, videos, articles written by our claims attorneys who are on staff to handle claims that come in from our insureds. So really great resources. If you have any questions or want to know more, please check that out at alpsinsurance.com. Thank you again for beautiful, cold Missoula, and we will see you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Abigail.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.